From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. The Broncos officially hire Sean Payton as their new head coach. He's going about building his staff as we speak. And the Broncos, of course, are now tasked with trying to get back into contention. And we're going to start with how they improve the offense. Specifically, what does Sean Payton do to help Russell Wilson move from what we saw last year back into what we thought he could be?
I think you find the concepts that worked last year and you build off of those. I think you work on trying to establish the run game and build off play action. I think you're looking for situations where you can take some deep shots outside the numbers or set those up. Two of the things that Sean Payton has done well over his career is, one, scheming up the run game. Believe it or not, he's actually that's what he's been best at, or at least more known for in his mind. The football intellect or acumen, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. It's scheming up the run games and finding ways to get running backs the best run lanes, and then two, running so that you look like you have four vertical look no matter what way you're lined up. And if you have that look, then teams have to go back and adjust to what it is that you're showing. And that usually leaves somebody with a one-on-one and tries to force you to guess wrong in the vertical game. Well, for Russell Wilson, that should be an advantage. So, if you can do those two things and you can do those things often and well, then Russ will probably look a lot better than he looked last year.
I thought Sean Payton has done a pretty good job. Of course, most of his work that we know of is with the New Orleans Saints and with Drew Brees. But even then, with the other quarterbacks that he's had through there, whether it was Teddy Bridgewater, Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, any one of those quarterbacks, you see that he does tweak some things to help them out. And so what I've been thinking about in terms of that is you were, through this entire hiring process, talking about, well, Sean Payton with Drew Brees, that's not exactly Russell Wilson's game. What you're asking Drew Brees to do is not something you're going to say, Russell Wilson, now duplicate that. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm kind of coming down on, like, okay, well, when Sean Payton watches Russell Wilson and he says, okay, this is what this guy does well, what's he going to say? Is he going to say, I got to get this guy in the move? Is he going to say that we need to design some more passes to go to the boundary, to go outside the numbers, because he does like throwing there? How would you go about starting there with Russell Wilson?
Well, I think that is what you're going to do. I think you're going to work on finding ways to get the run game going first, because everything for Russell Wilson builds off of that. So I think you're going to try to be as effective as you can running the football.
And he said as much, by the way.
And then after that, you're going to put him on the move, get him booted, get him outside. Find ways to create routes that'll put him outside the numbers where you can put the football there. And you'll have to do some things to kind of navigate that a little bit. One of the things that I felt like they could have done last year that they really didn't at all was at least sell the inside and move it back outside. Some pivot route, whip route, stuff like that allows you to fake the inside and then get back outside. And you put the quarterback on a quarter boot, and now he's got a natural progression to hit the guy in stride. They didn't do any of that. So it'd be nice to see that, some sail concept type stuff that puts guys over the honey hole in cover two and gives them the opportunity to throw outside the numbers. There are concepts that you can really integrate that that I think would be beneficial to Russ. The reason that during the hiring process, the reason I kept making that Drew Brees comparison and it being the opposite is because when people are talking about Russ lobbying for this to happen, Russ is lobbying for this to happen because he thinks he can be Drew Brees 2.0. That was the reason he came here in the first place. We don't want that. We saw how bad that looks. We want Russell Wilson to be Russell Wilson 1.0 and continue to build his legacy from there.
Well, I think that's really well said. And you're right. I mean, the anticipation or the belief was he was coming here to prolong his career, and part of the reason he was in the pocket as much as he was is, well, you're theoretically not taking as many hits back there, but of course he took, I don't think it was a career high in sacks, but pretty dang close. Mm-hmm. The Broncos, of course, were one of the worst in the league when it comes to sack rate as it was. So that's something that you got to start with in no matter what, right? The run game, the offensive line, the protections, the hot routes for Russell Wilson. One of the things that we saw last year so often was it just seemed like when teams did come with pressure, when teams did come with the blitz, there just wasn't really much of an answer. So I guess for me, when I'm starting to think about, okay, how do you construct this offense in a way that really benefits Russell Wilson, I'm saying, okay, know where your keys are, know where your reads are, because it seemed like at times he'd drop back or be in the shotgun, right, and take a couple steps, and then it would be one of those things, hey, they'd have somebody in his lap. There was nowhere to go with the ball, and he just took it.
Yeah, and we saw that happen quite often. Now, there were some sacks that were definitely on Russ, but there were some sacks that were definitely on the offensive line as well, and that's the thing. You're going to have to figure out, it's not just scheme. Sometimes it's personnel. Sometimes you got to upgrade the personnel, and I think that over the last couple of years, the Broncos have struggled in protecting, specifically at the A-gap, the pressure coming through the A-gaps. And when you have pressure coming through the A-gaps, it's tough. as a quarterback. You can't step up in the pocket because that's your natural instinct would be to step up right then and there, and you can't do that because that's where the pressure's coming from. You're used to it coming off the edge, right? So, I think that's something that they're going to have to upgrade personnel-wise. In terms of scheme-type stuff, I mean, there are different things you can do. We saw them run gun two-back last couple of games. We saw how that worked in terms of giving them options, confusing defenses, and leaving a back end to protect if you needed to do that. You weren't tipping your hand. So, for me, I would love to see that. I'd love to see a situation where you're not really running with a traditional tight end, which Dulcich really isn't anyway. I think you're running a type of offense that's maybe an 0-2 personnel set, but that tight end is flexed out as a slot receiver or a heavy slot. Or flexed out wide. We saw that happen when Jimmy Graham was there in New Orleans. They put him all the way out wide. And he wasn't even in the slot. So, I think there are options to do those kinds of things, and I think some of it could be beneficial. I'd love to see some, a heavier dose of RPO or RPO type looks out of gun two back, where you're not giving away which way you're running it because you get them split. So, if you're doing the RPO, well, then you have a pitch option too going the other direction, and I think that gives you some versatility into utilizing the athleticism of Russell Wilson.
It's interesting. We're talking a lot about being in shotgun, which I also anticipate to be something they continue to do. And there's certainly ways to function around that. But so often last year we spent time talking about how much we wish he was under center more. So I do wonder for Sean Payton, especially building off play action, how much he's going to try to incorporate him under center. Or is there a way, as you mentioned with RPOs, that you can work out of shotgun and work it that way?
Yeah, I think the main thing about that is the under center stuff was if you were going to run the offense that they were saying that they were going to run there, which was outside zone. We're making no illusion that we're going to be running outside zone anymore. It's going to be the Sean Payton offense. It's not outside zone. And so we're getting away from the whole, Shanahan thing. We're going to what Sean Payton does, which, theoretically should be beneficial to Russell Wilson. I don't know that they'll be under center that much. Drew Brees wasn't under center very much. And to be honest with you, the only quarterback I remember being under center a lot for the Saints was Taysom Hill, and it was varied looks. They went from wildcat looks to under centered all over the place. So even Jameis was in the gun quite a bit. So I don't know necessarily that he's going to be under center more. I think you're probably looking at better protected or better dressed up gun plays.
So that you said it perfect. It's more of a function of what we're looking for in that offense, rather than what we're going to be seeing out here in Denver. And I think that's an important thing to highlight is we're looking for ways to sort of help Russell Wilson and see how he sort of acquiesces and fits into this offense. I think we start with, okay, what part of last year's offense wasn't really all that good of a fit? Many people, including many of his former teammates, came out after the season saying it felt like square peg, round hole oftentimes with what they were asking Russell Wilson to do.
It was. I mean, you had no short or intermediate game. You had no dress up on anything. Everybody knew what was coming the entire time. And it wasn't there wasn't any disguise to it at all. And so that really put Russ at a disadvantage. You're talking about a guy who's already injured. Already had the torn lat and all this kind of stuff. Why not dress some stuff up a little bit? Why not, try to do some things that, maybe don't tip your hand with what you're running right off the bat. And, when's the last time we saw a shallow crosser? When's the last time we saw any of these relatively simple concepts? And, I think that those are things that could help. Get your quarterback in a rhythm, get him confident, get him going. I've always been a big proponent of getting some, maybe take a deep shot early to back people off. But for the most part, you want to get your quarterback in a rhythm early with some easy stuff and then build up to it.
Well, and one of the rhythms I think for Russell Wilson might be getting him on the move at times, right? You have some designed rollouts, right? We talked a little bit about that. You have some design movements of the pocket where you get a chance to give him some looks, some multi-tiered looks. I mean, that's something that is like sort of what we always used to see all the time with Seattle when they did get into a passing set is it give him some options. And if nothing else, hey, Russ, if it's all covered, great. You're one of the most mobile quarterbacks, or at least you're like a freaking tank once you start going. Build off that and give that the look. And in the end, listen, Russell Wilson doesn't have to get back to being a 700 or 800 rushing yard running quarterback. What we need is the threat of it. That more than anything else, it's the threat of, as you mentioned, the deep pass. It's the threat of Russell Wilson taking off. That's what keeps defenses guessing just a fraction of a second longer.
It's the 300-yard rushing seasons with the threat of it being a 600-yard rushing season. The situational runs, the knowing that you've got to account for his legs on third down, that kind of thing. Third and four or less, and now all of a sudden you have to account for Russ's legs. That's going to open up everything else for everybody else.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to see this season. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.
live in your town.